everyone. My name is Steve Cochran, Superintendent of Schools, and I'm excited to welcome all of you here today, and thank you for making time to learn more about the district's planning for a facilities referendum. So a referendum is an opportunity for an entire community to come together to decide on a single question. And the question for this community on October 2nd, 2018, is about the future of our kids. And that is a question that we can all look at through multiple lenses. So there's an ethical lens through which we can look at that question in terms of our responsibility as a community for the health and education of our children. There is an educational lens through which we can look at that question as we consider how any changes in our space can affect the teaching that our teachers do, the learning that our kids experience, the relationship of our schools to the broader community, the relationship of our schools to the environment. So there are opportunities there. And last but not least, there is an economic lens through which we are looking at that question. And as we consider a facilities referendum, we can look at it in terms of an investment in our schools and our community. But we also know that there is an impact on our wallets. And we have people here today. We have community leaders, we have board members, we have those with children in the school system, we have people here without children in our school system, we have educators in the room today. Everyone may be wearing a different hat, all of us are taxpayers. And so we'll feel some impact from a facilities referendum. And I want to begin by just stating that the board and I are committed to limiting that tax impact as much as possible. And that's something that I will be going into greater depth as we move through the presentation today. So there are really 3 points that I want to be focused on in our time together today. And I'll talk for about an hour, and then hopefully there'll be some opportunity for questions. The first is our critical need for space. That's really what's driving the referendum at this point. All of our schools are either at or over capacity, and there is a steep and sustained enrollment increase over the next 10 years. So there's the need. But that need also gives us an opportunity to transform our schools and even the learning for our kids. And so we want to talk about that today, the opportunity to shift to support our teachers in the way they want to teach, to prepare our kids for the 21st century, an opportunity to be more intentional about sustainability and to make that more explicit for our students as they understand their relationship with the environment. An opportunity for us to highlight the value that's so strong here in Princeton, which has to do with community support of our children and of their learning. So we want to talk about the opportunities that come with the need. And then finally, we want to focus on this notion of responsible investment. That an investment in our schools is an investment in our kids and in their future. It's an investment in our home values. It's an investment in the quality of our community. And it's also something in terms of responsibility that the board is looking at to make sure that the tax impact is as limited as possible. And because I'm going to talk for an hour and I'm going to talk about all the wonderful things we want to do with our schools, and some of you are going to be just waiting for the dollar signs to drop and think, you're not going to be listening to anything I say. I will tell you up front that our goal as a board is that the tax impact is not on an average assessed home, is not in the realm of thousands of dollars, more in the realm of hundreds of dollars. There will be an impact, and my job today is to let you know why we need this investment and the importance of it for all of us and for our kids. So let me just jump into the need. And I have, I should start by saying, this is the first of many opportunities that we are looking to have to engage with the community about our referendum and the plans as they develop over time. The referendum is not until October 2nd. I don't have all the answers today. I'm sharing with you as much as I know at this point. And at the end, we will talk about the process and the opportunities that will be forthcoming is even within the next month for you to learn more about the design, more about the costs, those kinds of things. We have our team of architects is with us today. You'll hear a little bit more from them at the end of the presentation, but they have been here all week on a kind of listening tour, trying to understand our community and getting inside our schools and looking at our spaces. But this is the first of many opportunities to have a conversation about the referendum. So the need. We have a challenge with capacity. And let me explain this graph, which comes from our demographer. The bars in blue are historical data and include the current year, 2017. The bars in red move us forward 5 years. That's considered the projected period. That in the world of demographers, that has a strong reliability. And then the bars in green are the extended period. And there are more variables that come into play the farther out you go. Demography is a science. There are a lot of variables that our demographer took into account. It's not an exact science, but I believe in the work that our demographer has done and the numbers that you're about to see. So when I came here as a superintendent, it was the middle of the 2013-14 school year, we were about 3,450 students. So during the 4 years that I've been here, we've come up about 300 plus students. And as you can see, moving forward, the next 5 years, we're going to go up another 500 students. And then the years beyond that, another 500 students to 4,800. So we're looking at about 1,000 students over 10 years, which is a 28% increase in our enrollment. I know that in the past, historically in Princeton, we've had ebbs and flows with enrollment. It's been high and then it's dropped and come back up, and schools have been closed and reopened. I think as you look at this graph, you see that it is steady and sustained in terms of the growth. The other thing that I would mention in terms of the work that our demographer has done, these numbers that you're about to see are as recent as this past weekend. So over the break, I went back to our demographer because the report that we had done before was based, it came out of 2016 data. It was a 2016 report that used 2015 data. And I said, you know what, we need to have the most reliable report we can. And so went back to the demographer and said, can now that we're into this current school year, and we know what our numbers are in this current school year, and they're high again, can you use the data that we currently have, kids who are currently in our system, use your industry standard 6-year history, but include this year as part of that 6-year formula. So he did that, and so these numbers are reflective of that most current data, and I think are fairly accurate, and I wanted to share that as well. So that's the district-wide projection. How does it look at each grade level band? Elementary enrollment, so pre-K through 5. Again, here's where we are historically. Here's our current year. You can see we've been coming up steadily. We're at 1,430 right now. This purple line, very important. This line represents the educational capacity of our schools. So educational capacity is 1,424. We're at 1,430 right now. We're right at capacity. And that educational capacity is determined, actually our architects did an extensive study of our schools, looked at all of our spaces and looked at how we used those spaces and made a determination of capacity based on that. So for example, kindergarten through second grade classrooms, they might have used a capacity of 20 to 22 students, and then third through fifth, they might have used 23 to 25 capacity, but they also looked at how we're using our schools. So we have autism classes or classes for students with multiple disabilities, and those numbers may be smaller. We may be using a classroom for those students, and that's appropriate, but they took that into account. So that might not have been included as a capacity of 25, for example. So that's where that number came from, and you'll see that on the other slides as we move through. So what I want to show you, so you're looking at we're at 1430 now, going up another 200 students over the next 5 years, and probably 250, closer to 300 as we move farther out. How does that look at each of our individual schools? I'll go through that very quickly. Community park. Community park is in an area where we may see more high-density housing coming in the future, and you see that reflected in these numbers. So capacity of community park is 384. We're at 377 right now. We've used almost every available classroom in community park. We have the Spanish room waiting in abeyance. If we're pressed, then we would put Spanish on a cart and we would take over that classroom. But that's the space we have available to us. But you can see where the numbers are going. We're going up by another 96 over 5 years. That's 4 classrooms of 24, and then we're looking to reach almost 500 at community park. Well over capacity. Here's the difference you see at Johnson Park. The numbers remain very flat. So Johnson Park's capacity is 393. We're at 390 right now. We actually are projected to drop a handful of kids over the next 5 years, but you can see that it's sustained. It's a flat line, but at capacity. Little Brook. We're at 359 right now. Again, historically that's higher than it's been for quite some time. Projected to go up to 45 students by 2020. So over 400 in just a couple of years. And again, we are using every available space at that particular school. Capacity is 341, so we're clearly over capacity, and that continues. Riverside. This school is certainly affected. So Riverside has been historically our smallest elementary school, typically under 300. You can see that it is at 304 right now. Capacity is at 306. So we're right at capacity. But we're projected to go up to over 400, 426 in numbers out, which would make it actually larger than Johnson Park. So that would be 120 students, 6 classrooms of 20. We don't have those classrooms at Riverside. Those of you who have students there, you know that we have the black box theater is one space that the kids and the teachers love to use to put on performances, to have open space for dancing or acting or for building things. It's a beautiful space that's used often by the school, but we would have to take that back as a classroom. But that's the one space that we would have. Middle school. The picture's even more dramatic. How many of you have students here at JW? Okay. So once again, historically, in this year, those of you who had students last year, you knew that our numbers were high. We actually at one point reached 791 here at JW. We had a very large 8th grade class. Students don't come to us in nice, neat little, evenly distributed piles. So our 8th grade class was at 280, and we struggled. We had class sizes of 28 to 30. And we had to try and make some adjustments, which I'll talk about in a little bit. We dropped slightly this year because that large 8th grade class moved up to the high school. We had a smaller 5th grade class coming up. It was a 5th grade class of about 200, but it's already 220 now. So we've already gained more students. So these projections are proving to be true, and you can see, so this is where we are now, but in 2 years, well, 3 years, 2020, we're going to crest 850 in this building. And then you take that farther out, in 5 years, we're looking at almost 1,000 students in JW. And we just do not have the space in this building for those kids. Capacity, 626. So even at this point, at 727, we're 100 students over capacity, and we're looking within a relatively short time to being at 967. As I say here, a 33% increase in 5 years. So there's a need there at the middle school, and then you turn to the high school. Capacity of the high school is 1424, we're about 200 students over capacity right now, 1612, and you can see that we've been creeping up over the past 5 years. Fortunately, I mean, we're tight. We're very tight at the high school. Fortunately, we're going to be staying steady for a few years and then jumping up to almost 1,700 5 years out, and then it keeps going. The students are in our system now. We have a high kindergarten class, large first grade class. We can project out. We know those kids are coming, and you can see that 2,000 students by 2026. So you're looking at numbers, you're looking at graphs, you're seeing this in a theoretical form. So what does this look like? What does it mean for us to have 1,600 kids in a high school that is projected or where the capacity is 1423? It looks like this. This picture was taken yesterday morning by a student, and I always rely on our kids to help us here, trying to get to class. So when you think about capacity, you can look at the classroom space, but there are other ways in which it's manifested. And this is just kids trying to move through the hallway. So what are we going to do? Or what have we done already? This is, as you saw, the numbers have been creeping up from where the high school was and middle school. So we have been wrestling with this enrollment issue for the time that I've been here. And so what are some of the things that we have done? So at the high school, we've actually done a lot, as much as we can. So we took a large, not so usable space in the health PE wing of the building that had big pillars in it. We converted that into 2 nice usable health classrooms. We took 2 large classrooms in the 130 hallway and divided them to create 4 classrooms, so adding a couple of classrooms there. Science is a sticking point for us. Because of the lab equipment, we really are limited to 24, maybe 25 students in a science class, but our kids love science. They're required to take science, but they also love it. So they're looking at lots of different science electives. And so in order to accommodate that desire, those choices on the part of our kids, as well as the requirement, we took some regular classrooms and converted them into science lab space. Took a supervisor's office, converted that into a small instruction room. Teacher's lunchroom was converted into a life skills room for our high school students with autism who are flourishing at the high school. Most of you have probably seen if you have students at the high school, how many of you do? All right, you've seen the trailers out in the parking lot. We had teachers who were using classrooms as offices, but it wasn't one teacher in one big classroom. It was an entire department in a single classroom. So the architects were on a tour of the high school yesterday. We walked into the PE office. There were 12 PE teachers sitting in cubicles in a small space. So we had the social studies department in an office together, the English department in an office together. We built the trailers to the tune of $500,000 or leased them, and then we took the teachers out of the classrooms, and then we could recoup those classrooms. So the teachers are in the trailers, the students now have the use of those 2 classrooms. We created, with the help of the PTO and other organizations, we created an instructional classroom in the library, some beautiful glass walls, and that gets used. And we've had to increase class sizes in certain areas at the high school, 28 to 30. We've been working around the margins and doing as much as we can to get by, but the time, in my opinion, is now to be able to do something larger and more strategic, and that really supports the learning for our kids. What have we been doing at JW? Here we're using all available space, and when needed, we have to increase class sizes. So last year we had a large 8th grade class. We had class sizes in certain subjects, 28 to 30. This year we had some of the same thing again. In 8th grade, tends to be a larger class. Students keep coming in. So we had to create an additional section of English so that we wouldn't have class sizes of 31. So those are the kinds of things that we're doing to get by in this space. And same at the elementary school, use of all available classrooms. We have some Spanish classrooms hanging in abeyance, like a CP, ready to be used if we need them. And then we're looking at increases in class sizes. So in the time, when I started here, we had class sizes of 14, 15, 16. Those days are leaving us. When I was talking to the principal at JP today, he said almost all of my classes are 21 to 25. Now, again, kids don't come to us in all at the grade levels in the distribution that we always want. So if we have usually 3 sections at a grade level. So if I have 50 students, I can make a choice and say, all right, I want 2 classes of 25. Or if I have the space, I can create 3 classes and my numbers drop to 17, 16. So you will see some class sizes that are smaller, but again, if we don't have the classroom space, then they're going to go up. So what is our vision? Given the need that we have for space, what are we hoping to do? And we're looking at ways to expand at the high school, and I'll talk about those multiple ways in a second. And we're also looking at this idea of a 5-6 school, unique environment, built on where the Valley Road site is right now, where the board office is now. So let's take a look at the high school first. We're looking at space to accommodate 300 to 400 students. How might we do that? And I say might because we're still in that open, dreaming design phase now. And so one possibility is a multi-story addition that would be expanding the footprint of the high school. We're envisioning that could go in the parking lot along Walnut Street and Houghton, that corner there, and that it would include flexible space for learning. One of the things the architects met with focus groups and teams of teachers throughout this week, high school, middle school, elementary school. Everybody asked for the same thing. Everyone said, the boxes we're in confine the way we can teach. Give us flexible space. Give us space where we can bring large groups together and even across disciplines and do something exciting with direct instruction, but give us space where we can also work with kids in smaller groups, where individual students can engage in research or reading. Give us space where we can build things and students can apply their learning. And so we're looking to have that kind of flexible space for learning. We're looking to extend the cafeteria. So the cafeteria now is functional, but it's not the most appealing place for our kids to eat. And again, our architects were there during break, so they saw the vast majority of students sitting and eating in the hallways and some of the students in the cafeteria. So we're looking at how can we expand the cafeteria to make it a more appealing place, and we're looking at that space as not just space for eating, but space for learning throughout the day. So how can we create space that really can be used for instruction? And that brings me to some of the other thoughts. So not just looking at an addition, but what can we do with the space currently at the high school, reconfigure it, reimagine it, to create space internally. So courtyards, classrooms, library. We were in the library yesterday, which is a converted auditorium. For those of you who've seen it, there's a balcony that's just completely unused space. Is there a way to find a way to use that? We have courtyards that could be used for space. Looking at classrooms, creating them differently. So Fortunately, we have an architectural team that specializes in exactly this, in 21st century learning and in redesign even of internal spaces. And there's sometimes very simple, cost-effective things that can be done to actually add space to an existing school. So we're trying to take a look at that. And parking. So anyone who has lived in Princeton for a day knows that this is a problem. Our architects experienced it firsthand as we tried to find space at each of the schools for them to stop and visit. So if we were to build an addition, for example, it would be on that parking lot, it would take up about 50 plus parking spaces. Where are we going to recoup those? Plus, where are we going to find the additional parking if we're to have 300 to 400 more students? Where are we going to find the parking for kids, for staff, et cetera? So our team is already looking at creative solutions there, but the devil is often in the details when you do these designs, so I didn't want people to think that we have forgotten that we need to find parking, and that we need to look at traffic flow and those kinds of things as we consider our design. New 5-6 school on the Valley Road site. I want to spend a little time on this element because it's new concept for us in Princeton. It's not new nationally and even in our local area. I'll talk a little bit about other schools that have very successfully employed the 5-6 model. But I want to share with you why I think it has great value for us here in Princeton. And there are practical reasons for why I think a 5-6 school makes sense for us. But the reasons that really drive me as an educational leader have to do with kids, have to do with the learning environment we're creating for kids at a unique developmental stage of their lives. And so what I love about the 5-6 school when it's employed well is that it allows childhood to last a little bit longer. It becomes a creative extension of the elementary school environment, that nurturing environment that our kids get at the elementary school level, but it then marries that with the excitement and exploration that the kids have in a middle school setting where they have more electives and more opportunities to try hands-on activities and to work in cross groups and to do enrichment kinds of experiences. So it's a place where kids can feel safe. So maybe our 5th graders, they have a team of 2, and you and I, own those kids, and you're teaching math and science to those students, and I'm doing language arts and social studies, and that's our team of kids, and we share them, we talk about them, and that's a transition from 4th to 5th. And then in 5th grade, maybe it's a team of 4, and with content specialists in science, social studies, math, language arts, world language, 4 or 5. That's one model. When we talked to the teachers, they came up with other ideas. They said, well, maybe, every child known is an important element to our strategic plan and our mission. Maybe we should move with the kids and loop. So the 5th grade teachers have a group of kids, and those 5th grade teachers then become 6th grade teachers for the same group. So we don't know exactly what shape it's going to take. That's part of the where we are in the discussion process right now. But the idea is that it becomes more of an extension of elementary school that prepares kids then for the middle school experience. 5th and 6th graders are in sync. They're sort of physically in the same place, emotionally, socially, and so what you find in a 5-6 environment is that there's very little bullying. One of the quotes that you'll see from the assistant superintendent in South Brunswick is that our hallways, our cafeteria, our playground are unbelievably peaceful. So the kids are in sync in that way, and intellectually they're in sync too. They're engaged in the same kinds of things. So you can have cross-grade sort of enrichment experiences for students that bring the kids together and where they're doing exciting things. The curriculum and the skills are in sync. So as at an elementary school that's K through 5, I have the kindergarten teachers working on letter sounds with kids, and first grade teachers just beginning, word association and the beginnings of reading. My 5th grade students, my 6th grade students, they're focused on different things. They're looking for bias in the text they're reading in social studies, or if they're writing a persuasive piece, now we've introduced the element of counter-argument and how to include that in a piece of writing. And so what you have is a school where the focus is similar in terms of the needs and the skills and the concepts, and so it allows the teachers to sort of be unified in their work together. And so the professional development and the projects and those connections start to really happen in some exciting ways. So, if you're thinking about this, like one of the potential downsides to a 5-6 school, as you think about the journey of our children, kindergarten, pre-K, all the way to 12th grade, is that we have more stops along the way, right? So now there's a transition 4th grade to 5th grade. There's a transition 6th grade to 7th grade. That could be a bad thing, or it could be an opportunity. It can be an opportunity for us to focus very intentionally on transition and to take a look at how we're moving our kids from 4th to 5th, 5th to 6th, 6th to 7th, and making sure that our child study team members, our case managers, our counselors, our teachers are thinking about that, and that we are having them talk to their counterparts in the grade above, that maybe provide opportunities for kids to have moving up experiences where the 4th graders visit their 5th grade class the spring before they actually go there, so that we are really thinking through transitions. And it has a broadening effect for the district. So part of our strategic plan is to look at transitions across the grades, transitioning into kindergarten, transitioning into the middle school, transitioning into the high school. So being intentional at 5-6 is consistent with our desire to be intentional across the grades. So did we look at other models? We did, actually, consider other models. So one question that I've had people ask is, what about a 5 through 8 school on the Valley Road site? So now you create a 5 through 8 here at JW and another 5 through 8 model at the Valley Road site. And I actually, in my past district as assistant superintendent, I had a 5 through 8 building, functioned really well. The 5th graders were a little bit removed from the rest of the students, but it's a model that can work. The issues that it raises for us, I think, in Princeton, the problems are at least twofold. One is a problem of parity. So we create a beautiful new 5 through 8 school with all the 21st century learning spaces and technology. But I can't afford to do that at JW as well. So now I have a group of kids who come through and get different experiences. I have some who get the really nice, shiny new school and some who don't. And so the 5-6 model has all of our kids being able to experience the new school at some point as they move through our system. The other problem for me is even more significant. So as we grow as a district, and you saw that number was significant, 28% increase over 10 years. As we grow, we want to strive as much as possible to retain that close community feel and safe, nurturing environment that we want for our kids and our teachers. And so creating having 2 middle schools means that I create more separation. Currently, when students arrive in 9th grade, we have students coming new into high school from Cranberry, we have students coming new into the high school from Charter. We would be creating another avenue where kids would be coming in new from 2 different middle schools. And so the 5-6 allows our kids to really connect and bond before they go to JW in the high school. And then now we get into the practical piece of this. So by creating a 5-6 school on a separate site, I pull the 5th grade classrooms out of the elementary schools, the 4 elementary schools, and then I immediately free up space at the elementary schools without having to touch them physically. And the same thing here at JW. The 6th grade comes out of JW, and without making a single change to this building, I put it back at capacity. So it's cost effective to do it this way, as opposed to trying to add to every single building, especially while I have teachers and students learning in those buildings. So it makes sense from a practical standpoint to consider the way it frees up space, and it maintains that the neighborhood school. Again, back to that sense of community. So the other option would be for me to create a 5th elementary school, and then I have to think about redistricting all of our kids. So the idea of the 5-6 allows for the elementary schools to sort of be walkable and within their neighborhoods. So a little bit more about the 5-6, and just to, as I indicated before, we're not the only district that's considering this, and there are districts that have gone before. So Montgomery has what they call the lower middle school. It's a 5-6 school. They've had it for 12 years. The superintendent and the principal could not be more excited about the experience that they have with their kids. And you can see the quote from Mike here, the principal at the lower middle school, and it summarizes what I said before, is that the nurturance of the elementary experience combined with the content specialization that you get at the middle school level, that comes together. And for him, it's as simple as that. You can see Hillsborough, Bridgewater, Raritan, and then South Brunswick. And South Brunswick is a very interesting story. They no longer have a 5-6 school. They have 2 middle schools, and they regret it. Joanne Perkis, the assistant superintendent in South Brunswick, she just retired last month, an icon in the educational world in this area. She was back in the early 2000s, she was the principal of that 5-6 school. And this is way too much text for any appropriate PowerPoint slide, but I thought that it was important for you to read her words. Like, for those of us fortunate enough to have been part of the upper elementary school experience, you'll hear at South Brunswick to this day, there were no better years than those. What happened during those 5 years was nothing short of magical, and I love this quote. We saw childhood extended and gained a glimpse into who our children would become as adults. It's that childhood nurturance and then that opportunity for them to experience independence and come back. And you can see what she says. Cafeterias, hallways, playgrounds, unbelievably peaceful. Regrouping across grade levels managed with ease for enrichment activities or for intervention. The arts, performance, research tasks flourished. I think they began like the 6th grade research project in South Brunswick at this point. Extracurricular activities focused on collaborative clubs. So at the 5-6 school, we have to make a decision about this, but we don't have to give the 5-6 school every sport and every activity that we have here at JW. We can pick those kinds of things that make sense developmentally for those kids. And so the examples here are Odyssey of the Mind, the Invention Convention, things that got kids together across grade levels, creating, building, learning, socializing. And then her point again about the professional development. The alignment of the curriculum made the professional development, that's the PD piece, with staff as great as I've ever experienced. We were ahead of the curve. Because the whole school can focus on single ideas at the same time. So it does provide a wonderful opportunity for learning for kids, for learning for staff, and there is that practical benefit that we gain from looking at the 5-6 configuration. So what else might the referendum include? So we talked about the high school expansion piece, we talked about the 5-6. Safety and security. When you walk into any one of our 6 buildings, you could go to the office and sign in. Or you could go straight, or left, or right, and be right there among the staff and the students. All of us remember, it was not too long ago that we had the swatting incidents here in Princeton. All of us have read the paper, seen on the news, the number of school violence issues that are happening in our country today. We want our kids to be safe. And so part of the referendum planning is to create these warm, welcoming, but secure vestibules or entryways into each of our buildings. And there are ways to do that. The architects are very familiar with having to do that. You'll hear from them. Their latest project was out in Boulder. They're very sensitive in Colorado to school violence, and so they're familiar with how to create these entryways or vestibules that have that warm, welcoming feature to students, to families, and at the same time are secure. HVAC upgrades at all 6 schools. Current boilers are 15 to 20 years old. So as homeowners, that would be a point at which you would be thinking, you probably want to think about replacing these before they die on us in the middle of winter. And as a school administrator, I'm thinking the same thing. And the referendum gives us an opportunity to do that kind of prudent management of our schools and to replace them with high efficiency boilers so that we're saving money at the same time over the long haul. Not a bad thing, particularly we all experienced the cold snap in the last few weeks, and we had generated boilers that were out at the high school for a brief amount of time. We had CP had an issue with their gym where it was freezing cold for a while. So it's not insignificant for us to be considering. The same thing with the generators. We have power outages frequently in Princeton anytime the wind blows, right? So those of you with students at Riverside or Little Brook, Johnson Park, you've experienced those power outages where the phones aren't working, the computers aren't working, some of the toilets aren't flushing, the kitchen isn't working. So the generators would allow for that, and so that we could maintain school. And then finally, air conditioning in the gyms and the cafeteria. So if you've been in any of our 5th grade moving on ceremonies or high school graduation, or if you've been to a high school basketball game in the gym, like in June, like it is hot, it is unbearable, and almost unsafe. And so this is an opportunity for us as we're doing the referendum and touching our buildings to be able to place air conditioning into the gyms and cafeterias, the classrooms in all of our schools at the same time to ensure a safe, healthy learning environment for students and for staff. We are woefully shy of athletic facilities in Princeton. And that's both for scholastic sports and as well as for summer recreation. As we grow as a community, as we grow as a school district, there's going to be even more need. Half of the students at the high school are engaged in after-school sports. It's a wonderful way to learn. It's a wonderful way to stay healthy. And so we are interested in expanding the athletic fields that we have, as well as providing space internally in the school that could be flexibly used. So maybe it could be used for dance, maybe it could be used for wrestling. But we want to be able to provide that for our students as we grow. And then if you've been paying attention and sort of following the bouncing ball with the idea of the 5-6 schools in the Valley Road site, the question is, okay, well, where do the people who currently live in Valley Road, where do they go? And it's more than just me. So my office is there, but we have the curriculum office and all the people who work there. We have the business office. Ms. Kennedy, who's here today, all of her payroll people are there. We have all of our buses and all of our transportation staff are there, and we have maintenance staff who work out of that. We have a shop there. So we need to provide an alternate space for those people, and we're looking. So we have a few options, live options in terms of real estate within the town of Princeton. Ideally, we're going to find piece of property with a building on it that we can move into with just some internal renovations, and we don't have to build something separate. And it's a lot easier if we're just accommodating offices for adults as opposed to the educational spaces, which have very different specifications. So that's a piece of what this puzzle needs to be. We'll have more of an answer about that in probably 4 to 6 weeks in terms of what properties make sense and where we might be able to move all of our staff. And ideally, if there is enough space in any building, it would be great to have the possibility of a preschool center. So if you think back to Riverside, for example, and how overcrowded it is, part of it, we have 3 preschool classes there. There's 2 at JP, there's 1 at CP. So there's a possibility to bring those together. Then we create more space at the elementary school. What happens if we can't create more space for whatever reason? I'll touch on this quickly. Class sizes, 25 to 30, particularly at CP and Riverside, unless I look at redistricting and then I spread the problem out among everybody. But as you can imagine with redistricting, you saw like JP was already at capacity, Little Brook was already over capacity by about 50 students. So taking the extra 100 students at CP and moving some is really not going to solve the problem. It's just going to minimize, ameliorate it a little bit. So larger class sizes without question. At the middle school, class sizes of 30 to 35. I'm not sure how we would handle this at the middle school. So at the middle school now, we have teams of 5 teachers, and typically those 5 teachers, so 2 teams at the 6th grade, 2 teams at the 7th grade, 2 teams at 8th grade, 5 teachers on a team, and so they may have, 240 kids at a grade level, 120 on a team. So what is that? That's or maybe it's 24, something like that, to a class. If we go to 900 and now we have 300 on a grade level and 150 on a team, divided by 5, I'm looking at 30 kids in a class. If we go to 1,000, it's going to be even greater. So we're looking at larger class sizes. We're looking at the possibility of cutting or limiting the exploratory programs. So the coding, the robotics, the entrepreneurial business class, the wood shop, like those are the things our kids love those experiences here. And yet if we need those classrooms to teach English and science and math, then we may have to limit that opportunity for students, which is exactly what middle school should be. It should be those opportunities for exploration and for looking at interdisciplinary kinds of projects. And that's what our kids are loving about their middle school experience, and that's something that we may have to limit for them. Might have to renovate the former library, which is that room over there. It doesn't function very well as a learning space right now, and so there would be internal renovation. We may recoup a few classrooms there, but we're not going to solve the problem with that renovation. And then at the high school, we can't make the class sizes that much larger. I mean, these are adult bodies. You can only get so many in a space. So we really can't go much past 28 to 30. Our science classes, as I said before, are limited to 24 or 25. So then we start the same issue that we were talking about in middle school. We start limiting elective offerings. So our kids, they love their electives. They love their electives in science and in art, but if we need those classroom spaces for them to get their required courses in English and social studies, then we may have to start limiting the choices and electives that our students have. And at the high school, because they need credits for graduation, we do worry about their ability to meet the requirements in certain areas. So yesterday we were touring the high school, and we went into the classroom of the guy who teaches architecture, all right? And that's a practical art. He teaches, he's one person, teaches engineering and architecture. So if I have 400 more students at the high school and they all need a practical art, they're all trying to get into that class, some of them are not going to get in. Same thing with Python or Cisco, some of these other classes that we have a teacher or two, there's just not enough space in the schedule for all kids to get what they need, and that becomes an issue for us. Split sessions, I mean, I'm throwing up any idea here if we really didn't have the space that we need. Split sessions is not something that we want to go to. Schools have done it in the past. That's where you say half the school is going to start at 7 in the morning and end at 1:30, and then the other half is going to start at 2 and go till, 7:30. And that's not something that we want to do at all. Okay, so that's the need, the challenge, and that creates for us an opportunity. And I have 3 slides here, but they're important. 4, actually. Schools are not buildings. They're the people in them. I really believe this. They're the students, they're the staff, they're the parents, the community members who are using that space. And so the question for us as we consider expansion of space is how do we create the kinds of space that will connect, support, and inspire all of those people. And we're looking at least 3 ways to do that. So one is inspiration through this idea of 21st century learning. And you've heard me talk about this already with the idea of flexible space and hands-on experiences for students. But our schools need to reflect the world for which we're preparing our kids. And the 21st century world is very different than the 20th or 19th century world, and sometimes our schools are stuck in that space. So knowledge is doubling every 2 years. We can't just stand in front of our kids, give them more and more knowledge, and expect them just to regurgitate that to us. We need for them to evaluate the knowledge that they're receiving. We need for them to apply that knowledge in meaningful ways, authentic ways. And so when we look at 21st century skills, when we look at what our colleges are looking for, when we look at what our workforce is looking for, it's skills like creativity and innovation, collaboration, critical thinking and problem solving, looking at authentic problems and how to make a difference with those. Being culturally, globally, and environmentally aware becomes a 21st century skill. Arts, movement, nature, those are things that we want our kids to have experiences with. And as I said before, we want to have more of a learner-centered teaching environment. That's what our teachers are asking for. Right now, they're stuck in a box where the primary way in which they deliver information is to stand in front of a group like I am now and just talk at them. And you can only get away with that for so long. You've been very polite so far, but with kids, it's, they need to be doing things with that knowledge. So yeah, direct instruction is great. We can bring large groups of students together and do that. Like the research class at the high school is a good example. So the kids they may all come together for instruction in how to do certain scientific research. They may actually work together on a project as a model, but then they need opportunities to say, well, the 3 of us want to explore this topic, or independently on my own, I want to look at this scientific research question. And so we need opportunities for our kids to be in large spaces for certain kinds of instruction, and then in smaller spaces where they can work collaboratively. We need spaces for them to be on their own and more reflective. We need spaces for them to get messy with building things or creating, whether that's in science or art. So those are the kinds of spaces we're looking to create that actually support the kinds of teaching our teachers want to do and the learning and the skills that we know our kids need as they move into the 21st century. So we're excited about an opportunity to focus on space that supports 21st century learning. And here's the nice thing. In some ways, it's actually cheaper to build. It's more efficient. Because in a 21st century learning model, you don't have just hallways with cells on either side that are classrooms. You have classrooms that have sliding glass doors or garage doors that open up into the hallway, and the hallway becomes instructional space. And so you actually, you're looking at schools that maximize the space in the building, and it becomes more cost effective. Same thing if we look at inspiration through sustainability. I was really proud when I took the architects on a tour of our schools to be able to show them the gardens and to talk about the long history of the garden curriculum, to be able to have the principals talk about the outside spaces and nature and the impact that that has on the learning for our students. And in fact, we went into CP and went into the library, and our fourth graders, I think, were actually, they were showing the videotape commercial messages they did about recycling. So the architects were able to see this is a value in our community. We care about this, our kids care about it, and how do we carry that into our schools? How do we make the sustainable concept present in our schools through the materials we use, through the use of natural elements outside, through looking at solar energy or geothermal. And our architects can speak to this later if there's time. You know, their last project in Boulder, they had they worked on net zero schools. Schools that, you know, they put up the solar panels and the schools produced as much energy as they used. And here's the other thing. We want the building to be an explicit learning environment for our kids. So if we have solar panels and we have southern exposure and we're using natural light, you know, can we show the kids in real time how the energy usage changes from day to day, on a sunny day versus a cloudy day? So maybe there's a kiosk in the main lobby where they can actually see the energy use in real time in that building, or that gets, you know, it's on a computer database and the teacher can pull it up on their computer screen and show it to the kids so that it becomes something that they can talk about and use instructionally. So what are the ways that we can make the building a learning environment for the kids? I walked into a building in West Windsor. They have flushless toilets there. It's like, all right, we're conserving water. That's an important thing. So how can we do those kinds of elements within our school design that become instructional for our kids? And once again, it's cost effective. It's not more expensive to build a LEED certified school. You just have to be intentional about it, and it's not more expensive to build it, but over time, it actually saves a lot of money. So we're excited about the opportunity with looking at the 5-6 school, looking at the changes at the high school, and then looking at our district in general to be more intentional about the sustainability. And then finally, inspiration through community engagement. So one of the values that I celebrate the most here in Princeton is the one of community partnership. We live in a district, in a town where the community wants to support the health and education of our kids. And once again, the space we create allows us to be more intentional about that community support. So you see in the model here, students, teachers are in the center, and then you have other people on the outside who are supporting. So here's the food bank, here's tutors and mentors, and they may go into the classes to help, or maybe there's opportunities for our students to go out and experience internships or externships in the community. Tuesday night, I had a meeting, the call to action, the superintendent's call to action meeting at Rider University on mental health. We had the call to action because in Mercer County in the past 18 months we've had 7 suicides of our kids. There were 600 people in that room. There's a desire to make a difference in the area of mental health. There are not easy answers to how to do that, but in our conversations this week with our community leaders, there were ideas that surfaced about, well, maybe we can create spaces in our schools where mental health professionals can come in, rather than us having to send students out to a psychiatrist's office to get support. That's one thing. I spoke to one of our principals today, yesterday, who said, 1/3 of our students don't get dental exams. Can we create just a space in the school, have a series of volunteers come in who can just do those exams for our kids. Kids don't learn when they're not feeling well, not healthy. And we know that kids learn best when their parents are engaged. So what can we do to engage families, those who may feel more intimidated by the school system, the bureaucracy, maybe language is a barrier. What kinds of things can we do to bring families in, to maybe teach English as a second language in the school, or to have literacy, technology literacy sessions that bring people into the school. What can we do to think about learning that doesn't happen just 8 to 3, Monday through Friday, but on the weekends and after hours and before school? And can we create spaces, a library that is open later, and maybe it's secure from the rest of the building, but an opportunity for family reading, those kinds of things. The responsible investment. This is the most important slide. What are we investing in? It's our kids and their success, their futures. It's our schools. It's our home values. And it's the quality of our community. But we know there's going to be a financial impact and real tax dollars. And so want to be honest about that. At this point, we don't know what that number will be. We should know by March. As I said, we don't know what properties we're purchasing, what the sale prices of those might be. We haven't done our school design yet, so it's much too premature to talk about an actual dollar amount. But we are committed, as I said at the outset, to limiting that tax impact. We've done our homework, and we believe that we can limit the impact on the debt service on an annual assessed home of, I think that's around $825,000, somewhere in that neighborhood. So that it's not going to be in the neighborhood of thousands or thousands of dollars, but hundreds of dollars, and that impact on the debt service will actually go down after 2022, 2023, when we are retiring significant debt. So we have $80 million of debt that will be maturing and retiring at that point. So the impact on the taxes from the debt service will actually decline. We have state incentives available for school construction. So it's roughly 10% plus or minus for new construction, and it can be up to 40% for renovation. So again, once we figure out what renovations we're doing, we'll have a better grasp of what state incentives may help us with our debt service. So that's a factor that I think will help us. AAA bonding, I want to thank our business administrator, Stephanie Kennedy, who's here in the front row, for making sure that we have that, and that helps us with our interest rate. And Stephanie's been working with independent financial advisors to help us make sure that we can limit that tax impact as much as possible. And it's the same group of advisors that have been working with the town for years. So they understand Princeton and the dynamic here, and maybe can help us work and continue to work with our municipality. Some other financial considerations. If we build a new school, there will be some increased operating costs. So I want to anticipate that question and just be forthright with the community about that. I'm not anticipating huge increases. So we open a new 5-6 school. We already have the 5th grade teachers. They're coming over. We already have the 6th grade teachers. They're coming over. Will I need a new principal? Probably. Will I need a custodial crew to clean the building? Yes. Will I need a nurse? Yes. Child study team? Probably. So there will be some increased costs with opening a new school, but again, we're hoping to limit that, and I look forward to being able to spell that out in more detail as we move through this process. Thinking about how to ameliorate those increased costs, we're actively engaged and amicably engaged in negotiating with our non-public school partners, those who send children to our schools, to see if we can get contributions or increased contributions to our operating budget. So we'll have more information to share on that in the next few weeks. Maintaining our facilities is just a smart thing to do. Just like you do as homeowners, you want to, you're not waiting until the roof caves in to replace it. And so we have that same sensibility as stewards of the school buildings and the tax dollars that we receive from all of you, and we want to make wise decisions, and spending money at this juncture, especially as debt is retiring, makes sense for us so that we are not having to do emergency expenditures at a time when we can't afford it. And also, the investment now makes sense when construction costs and interest rates are a little bit lower because the anticipation is that they're going to rise. So doing the investment now might help us. The referendum timeline. So how is this all going to unfold? I have a few bullet points here, but I'm going to stop with that because I really want the architects who are with us, this wonderful team. We have our local architect, Spiesel, Scott Downey is here, and we have another team from Michigan, from Fielding there, that specializes in 21st century school design. They're here with us. They have been spending this week in January getting input from the community. They're going to be coming back in less than a month in February to do more, to share designs, to get feedback. But I really would like to invite James Seaman from Fielding there just to share a little bit about their experience and hopes for this January session, as well as for coming back in February. Is that on?
Good. Can everybody hear me okay? Is that good? Okay. Thank you for all of that. And I just want to start by saying this is really, for us, this is the start of this process. So we are here this week. We started on Monday. We've interacted with teachers and parents and community members. We got to tour all the different schools. We've interacted with students there. We got to experience how it is at the high school, how tight it is. We experienced the break period. And so for us, this is really a learning experience. We're really learning about the district. We're learning about the needs here. And that's really important to our process. So we're not really coming in just asking what kind of spaces do you want. We're asking about what are the learning activities that you want to do. And what we've been finding is that teachers are really trying to do things that are focused on student-centered learning. They're trying to do project-based learning. They're trying to do activities with students that in the traditional classroom, it's very limited for them to do some of those things. They're trying to collaborate with their peers. So for us, it's really helpful to understand what the activities are, so that way we can design around those activities. So we came with no preconceived ideas. For us, it's really about learning, and it's really about listening. So I'm going to talk about the timeline through April, and then I'll have Scott Downey talk about kind of April and on. We're going to be coming back and wanting to seek more input. So we'll be coming back in 1 month. At that time, we're going to be coming with some initial ideas. They're not going to be finalized plans by any means. They're just really going to be concepts and ideas that we can share back to all the groups that we met with, to kind of bounce off of them to get an understanding of are we on the right page? Are there other opportunities? Are there other things that we need to look into? We would also like to have a format like this, a town hall meeting, where we can get your input on this as well. And so we'll have a workshop format where we'll share those same ideas that we'll be sharing with all the other groups to you, and we'd like to get your input on those as well. After that, we're going to then refine the ideas and concepts again, and come back in March and do the same thing, seek input again before we get to April. And April is kind of a critical date for us as far as the referendum goes. So I'll have Scott Downey talk about that.
Thanks. So the critical nature of that date is there is a process here. So in order to have the referendum for the public in October, we need to make a submission for an initial approval to the New Jersey Department of Education. And because of the time around that needs to happen in April. So that process will include submission of the design to them. Their review will also include a submission to the local planning board, and there's a process around that as well. And so that will all play out around that time. Now the process, including sessions like this, don't stop in April. In fact, there will be a lot more activity between April and October. We're going to hold a lot of public input sessions. We can continue with the critique and the development of the design ideas, but we want to make sure the public understands what the plan is here and the things that Steve has outlined, and there will be a lot of public sessions where that information can be presented and shared and input can be received. And as mentioned, a lot of those sessions will be great opportunities for you guys as you continue to think about this and learn more to share that input with us. If we're interested, that's why we are here. So that will happen in October, and then the goal beyond that, obviously, assuming the referendum allows the projects to advance by passing, then we would begin implementing them and construction and so forth with the goal of having a new school open by September of 2020.
Perfect. The only other thing I would highlight as we're thinking about the February meeting is that Fielding Nair International takes an interesting approach. They are educators and architects, and they have partnered with someone who may be one of the leading educators in the world on 21st century learning, and that's Heidi Hayes Jacobs. I've worked with Heidi for decades and followed her Curriculum 21 site. She's remarkably brilliant. And she is going to be here in February to talk to our community, to talk to our teachers, and she will be sustained in her engagement with our community and our staff right through until the opening of the school. So her work is going to be to sort of ensure that we have professional development that goes along with the space, so that as we build space for 21st century learning, our teachers are getting the very best professional development that we can give them and how best to use that space. And she'll have input into the design as well. The president of Fielding Nair, Prakash Nair, will be here as well. He and Heidi are writing a book together on 21st century school design. So I think they're very excited to be able to work with Princeton, and who knows, maybe we'll be a part of that book. But I just wanted to highlight that. And we'll get information out soon about the sessions, the town meeting in February. So that's the timeline. So with every good presentation, I tell you what I was going to tell you. I then tell you that, and then I tell you what I told you. So this is the tell you what I told you phase. We have a critical need. It's a need for space in all of our schools. They're all at capacity or over capacity. We also have an opportunity, an amazing opportunity to really create spaces that transform the learning in ways that our teachers want and that our kids want, and that will affect not just a new school or the high school, but will affect the entire district. We have an opportunity to be intentional in sustainability and to be intentional with our community support and partnerships. And we're going to be responsible in the way we use the tax dollars. And it is an investment that pays the highest return. It's an investment in our kids. So I will stop there. I really thank you for your attention. It is 10 minutes to 11. I want to make sure that people are out of here by 11. If you need to leave before then, please feel free. But if there are questions, I'd be delighted to answer any at this time. Yeah.
Thanks for your talk, Steve. A couple of things. In your demographic slides at the beginning, there are dips. Go back and look at it on the right side of the chart.
There are what?
There are actually dips in the demographics. You look at the elementary schools. So I'm just kind of curious. I just want to make sure that we're not overloading.
Yeah, I want to make sure of that too. I mean, that's the, you'll see in one or two of the elementary slides, goes down in the very last year, but it's still well above the capacity number. So I think we're trying to be as conservative as possible. I actually asked the demographer to redo his numbers, and so that we had the most up-to-date data, but to use the 6-year industry standard model so that we had a slightly more conservative estimate. So I understand what you're saying. We're going to be as prudent as we can be in looking at that, but I would hate to, I mean, if I look at what the middle school needs and what the high school needs, we need to do something now.
So the fact that those are flat and the elementary schools are dipping up, when we look at that far.
I wouldn't say the elementary schools are dipping up. You saw one elementary school where the number went down slightly, and that could vary. Like, some of these predictions are made on, we had the architect consulted with the town about where the building might take place. We're not sure where all this housing is going to go up. Or whether the university is going to open the Butler track in 10 years. And there's just a lot of unknowns. What we do know is this community is growing. You know, that trend, the overall trend, was steep and steady, and it's not changing. And what we're seeing, like where, some of you may be aware of the discussion we had about the numbers at the last demographic projections in the last board meeting. The demographer was spot on with our middle school, spot on with our high school, off with our elementary numbers. So in the first year of his projections, he had us at 1351 and we were at 1430, as you just saw. We went back and said, okay, well, what's up with this? And he went back and looked, and where the issue was the difference between, it was with kindergarten primarily, kindergarten, first grade. So he looks at the number of babies that are born 5 years before, and then there's a ratio of, an average ratio, or looking historically at how many of those babies end up going into kindergarten in the public schools. That number was way above, that ratio was way above 1. And that's where the issue was. So those kids, they're coming to us, and now they're in our system. So I understand what you're saying. It's a 10-year extended projection. There are variables but I think the overall trend of 28% increase over 10 years, 1,000 students, we need to plan for that, and we'd be irresponsible not to. Yeah.
First of all, thank you for the presentation, and thank you for bringing the architects in. We talked a lot about the 5th, 6th grade school, but we also talked about how all the schools are over capacity, and I'm wondering what might be happening before 2019, spring of 2019, for the improvement of conditions of the middle school, the high school, the existing facilities, and all of the elementary schools.
So there will be, every school is going to be touched by the referendum. And we are looking at things, as I said, things around the margins that we can do. The middle school numbers stay about where they are until 2020, when the 5-6 schools should open. So I think we're actually going to be okay at the middle school, but we are going to be making, each of the schools is getting money to do some different kinds of things, and we're looking at how much of that we can afford, whether it's expanding a library in one school, or one of the things that the architects actually suggested is we talked with various focus groups, we can provide an innovation fund at each of the buildings, a small amount of money for the schools to do some really creative things there. But I think that we're actually, the timing is good for us. The numbers really are going to affect us in 2020. We can put Spanish on the card if we need to. So I think we have the ability to get through until the 5-6 is built, and then we have an opportunity to do more. Yeah.
So what is the addition to the high school? When is that?
Same time period.
2020.
2020. Yeah. Yeah, Kevin.
Steve, you mentioned sustainability. Could you comment on the possibility of incorporating some of the historic elements of Valley Road School in the new design?
So that's one of the, the current Valley Road School was the first integrated school in Princeton. Actually, the high school was in the 20s was, but in 1948, I believe, the first integrated school. And so that's a really important historical feature. We have to really think through the design to see if there are elements of the building that could be physically preserved. And we have a whole half of that building that has gone into decay and is probably unhealthy and unsafe. So we have to take a look at that too. What I can say is that the spirit of that school will absolutely be preserved. There may be physical pieces, but schools and museums are very similar to me. Both are designed to inspire. And so if we can create in our school displays and museum kinds of experiences for kids that allow them to understand the history of the building, I think that honors the spirit of the school. And if we can build a beautiful school that serves the entire community, I believe that that is probably the greatest tribute to the history that we've had in this community. So the design ideas are it's all still fluid, and I'm sure the architects would welcome a conversation with those who are interested in how to preserve. They're aware that that's something that the communities may be interested in, a question they'd like to have answered. So they will consider that. Okay. Yes, sir.
You mentioned that the high school currently has 1,600 students, well over capacity, and projecting for another 400 by 2000. Could you tell us how many of the 1,600 are here from Cranberry, and have there been thoughts about asking Cranberry to
So great.
support all those students here?
So currently there are about 280 students from Cranberry at the high school. Their numbers are actually declining over the next year. So they have classes of about 68, 70. Currently, we look at their 3rd and 4th grades, we're looking at numbers in the 30s and the 40s. So their numbers are actually going down, and so the increase you're seeing is Princeton students primarily. However, the question is an understandable one. So if we're over capacity by 200 students now, we're going to be over capacity by 300 or 400 students. We have 280 students from Cranberry. What about that relationship? So let me just say a couple of things. There's an ethical piece here for me, which is we've had a relationship with Cranberry since 1990. They've been partners with us for more than 25 years. There's a bureaucratic legal piece to this, which is if we wanted to end that send-receive relationship, we can't do it unilaterally. It's a decision that's made by the Department of Education at the county level, and Cranberry would have to have another place to go. It's not easy. It's not easy to do it. It's not a hard decision ultimately. But let's talk about it just in terms of economics, because the bottom line here is that it would actually it would be a net loss, a significant net loss financially to the district if we were to lose the Cranberry students. And I need you to kind of stay with me, because there's the simplistic answer is 200 students over capacity, 280 students from Cranberry will solve all our problems if we don't have the relationship with Cranberry. It's not that simple, and here's why. Cranberry pays tuition for each of those students. We get $4.8 million into our operating budget every year. If we lost those 280 students, there are some, we could cut some positions, some teaching positions. So we would save some money, but we wouldn't save $4.8 million. 280 students, say 20 students in a classroom, you're looking at 14 teachers. Maybe there's a guidance counselor. I would hate to cut a guidance counselor, but with 280 students, maybe. All right, maybe there's 15 teachers, 15 positions that are directly tied to those Cranberry students. If you say even $100,000 per teacher with benefits, salary and benefits, $1.5 million. Remember, it's 4.8 that they get. There are teachers that we can't cut and positions we can't cut. There's this economy of scale. So if I have Cranberry students in choir, I can't cut the choir teacher. If I have Cranberry students in art class, I can't cut the art class. Like they're sprinkled out throughout the school. So they're paying for those teachers, but because of the economy of scale, I can't cut those people. I have 2 nurses. I'm going to need 2 nurses whether I have 1,600 kids, 1,400 kids. I can't cut them. I'm still going to need my administration, my supervisors. Cranberry pays a portion of my salary, of my business administrator's salary as it pertains to the high school. There are secretaries and assistants in that high school. A portion of their salary is part of the paid for by Cranberry. So there are these direct costs, maybe $1.5 million, maybe a little bit more, and then there's these indirect costs. So we still have to clean the same amount of square footage in that building, regardless of the students. So it's to heat the same amount of space. So maybe there's maybe $1.5 million, maybe even $2 million I can cut from the budget. but it's 4.8 million. So I'm looking at close to $3 million that I would lose from the operating budget every year. So now think about the difference between an annual operating budget and debt service paid over decades, right? So let's just say, and please don't quote me on that, there's no quote. Like, let's just say that the addition to the high school costs $20 million. I'm looking at, principal interest, $1 million a year over 20 years. But I'm losing $3 million a year from the operating budget. So, yeah, I could save $1 million a year over 20 years. I might save $20 million in 20 years, but I would lose $60 million from the operating budget. And if I lose $3 million a year, I'm going to have to cut 30 teachers. And I don't know where that would come from and how that would impact learning. So I use an example that's sort of maybe closer to home. So let's just say you're living in Princeton, you have 2 kids, you have a neighbor who says, look, can you provide room and board for my teenage daughter? And you say, and I'll pay you $3,000 a month to do it. And you say, great, I'm happy to do that. We love your kid, and the money's helpful. And so, now you have 2 kids and a teenage daughter in your house. And then you get a report that you're having twins, okay? Which is the metaphorical equivalent of the demographic report that I just got. And so you say to yourself, all right, so I'm having twins. Now I got 3 kids and twins. I need a 5-bedroom house. We're going to have move into a bigger house, and the mortgage on a 5-bedroom house is $5,000 a month. And then you're saying, but the mortgage on a 4-bedroom house is only $4,000. So why don't we just send the teenage daughter, as much as we love her, we'll send her back to her parents, and then we'll be able to get the smaller house. And it seems really smart until you think, oh, what about the $3,000 that we were getting? And so now when you do the math, it doesn't make sense. And you say, let's just buy the 5-bedroom house, we'll keep the teenage daughter, we'll have the $3,000, and everyone will benefit. And so I know it's a short explanation to a complex issue. I'm happy to talk to people offline about it, but I'm glad it was asked because it's important that we address it. Yes?
As you prefaced your response to that question, it is something we have to stay with. It's hard to get your head wrapped around it. Everything you just said makes sense, but as you were speaking, I couldn't help wondering, it sounded a bit like, well, we could make it up in volume. It's almost as if, by the same logic, we could maybe make more money by bringing in more students and
there's a point at which, I understand what you're saying, but there's a point at which we run up against those.
I admit it's very hard to get your head wrapped around it. Actually, there's 2 things. Before you answer that first question, you said that the demographics in Cranberry are such that the number of high school students that they're generating is going down. So again, it's hard to understand what demographic forces are at play such that in Princeton, our high school student population is rising, but in Cranberry it's falling.
Yeah. So, but in Cranberry, it's looking to come back up because there's building that's going on in Cranberry. They have their own settlement with regard to affordable housing, so it's going down for a while, but it could come back up to current levels. We're not sure. That's part of the, looking 10 years out, it's hard to be accurate with your predictions. But right now, the numbers of kids in their 3rd and 4th grade class are significantly less than the number of kids in their 7th and 8th grade class. Yeah.
So on this Cranberry issue, there are a number of things. Princeton doesn't have a lot more land that we can add on. The number 33% is astonishing to me. In 5 years, you think we're going to add 33% to the numbers of students?
It was 28% overall district-wide, 33% was, I want to say, the middle school, I'm not sure.
That's astonishing because how can you build that much housing in 3 years in Princeton? We don't have that much.
No, 28% over 10 years, Charlotte.
That number's at 5, sorry, I was looking at one of the schools was 5 years out. Maybe Community Park. So a couple things. Cranberry has a lot more land that they can build on than we do. If we're going to look at 10 years out and the demographic study, and you said it was changed yesterday, so I'll go online and look at the new study. But the numbers can go all over the place. Who knows if we're going to have this commitment to 1,000 houses in Princeton? We can't make any kind of prediction for this. And Steve, everything you said up there, I believe in 100% in education. I know you think I'm critical of it. I think getting the kids up, PBS said the thing you're going to do now is tech. That's exactly where our education should go. You know, it's really great to give kids all this extracurricular stuff, and that's super. But we've got the demographic thing. How can you address it if you don't even know what our commitment is? We can't make this decision until we know what the state's telling us we have to do. And then we can look at that. I talked to Princeton. They don't know what they're doing with Butler, but they've got a 10-year plan on it. Not in the next 5 years.
Right.
And what they want to do is build in West Windsor.
Right.
So that's good for us. And I see that you were talking to other groups about, whether they're going to be pilots or whatever. They've got to take on their responsibility for the numbers of kids they're sending to this district. However, one thing I want to make about Cranberry is they're paying a tuition rate that is significantly less than we pay per child in the district.
Let me just address that, and then I'll bring us to closure, because their tuition rate is calculated by the state, and it does not include many of the things that are included in our per pupil cost. They pay for all of their special ed out-of-district placements. We're not paying for those. They pay all of their transportation costs. They cover. So, and they will be, when we do this, the referendum, assuming it passes, they will pay their portion of the debt service on that, the interest on the debt service. So that will be factored into their tuition payment. They can't legally pay principal because one municipality can't own property in another municipality, but they can pay, have the interest on that principal incorporated into their payment. So they will be paying their fair share. I really want to thank everyone for being here. I'm going to stay up here. The architects will be here. If people have questions,